Mr. Growler by Shuck. Mr. Growler belonged to my wonderful mother, who raised my baby brother Jaunty and I whilst teaching at an elementary school. She'd been given Mr. Growler by a troubled pupil who'd lost his parents, and who called my mom the best teacher in the world. He is now very successful. Mr. Growler had been his boyhood teddy bear, but he wanted to give my mom a gift that meant something special to him. Mr. Growler sat on our living room mantelpiece at first, though my mom soon moved him into her bedroom when Jaunty developed a real fear of him. Mr. Growler was old as the Titanic. With a voice box, when you tilted his soft body 90 degrees, he'd emit a rather regal, throaty growl. Everything about that bear seemed rather regal. He was important, somehow. It was the stoic dignity he carried, like a stuffy English butler who never smiled or missed a day of work in his life. It must sound nuts, but when you were in the presence of Mr. Growler, you'd mind your manners. Raised voices were not acceptable, and curse words were completely out of the question. His beady black eyes followed you so very closely. Even my mother would soften her voice when Mr. Growler was around. Once she dropped a teacup with a loud smash, but before she cleaned it up, she apologized for the noise. Apologized to Mr. Growler. When I was 9 and Jaunty 5, my mom answered the door late one night to a woman sobbing for help, but 2 masked men then burst inside carrying knives. My mother's screams were stifled by a blow to her head, and the men started to argue. One of them was my dad, but I didn't know so at the time. In my terror, I noticed Jaunty disappear to fetch Mr. Growler from my mom's room. For comfort, I thought.
"Aw, is this your teddy bear, Jaunty?"
My dad sneered, eliciting a slap for his stupidity by the woman. Jaunty, sniffling a little, said nothing. He sat Mr. Growler on the mantelpiece to survey the scene. Then, Jaunty gripped my hand and walked me forward to face the opposite wall. He was trembling. His eyes resigned as if he knew something truly terrible was nigh.
"Stupid kids,"
laughed my dad.
"Now let's find where that fucking thrifty bitch stashed her cash."
Then, Mr. Growler growled. Jaunty and I tried our best to block out the sounds. Ever since, I've tried my best to forget. The police never caught the killer. My mom was unconscious, and Jaunty and I weren't much use as witnesses. There was remarkably little mess, as if the crime scene had already been cleaned, though nobody noticed the teeniest fleck of blood on Mr. Growler's eye. It was as if the 3 robbers had been ironed, pressed, and folded like laundry. 3 neat piles. Except that laundry doesn't scream and beg the entire time. And curse, which only made matters worse.